She said, "Welcome to the neighborhood," and handed me a warm tin of cookies. I did not know she was really introducing herself to my husband. My name's Camila. I am 30, and until last year, I thought a fresh start came with clean walls and new keys. Ben and I moved into a quiet street with big trees that lean over the road like they are listening. The house needed love, but we had energy. Paint samples taped to every room. A lawnmower we learned to use together. Saturday mornings with coffee on the steps because we did not own patio furniture yet. 2 hours after the moving truck pulled away, there was a knock. I opened the door to a woman with sunbrowned shoulders and a neat ponytail. She carried a round tin that smelled like butter and vanilla. "I am Hannah," she said. "House with the blue shutters." She smiled like she had practiced in a mirror and held the tin out like a prize. "Welcome, I figured you two could use something sweet." Ben came up beside me, hair messy from hanging curtains, forearms flecked with paint. He grinned and introduced us. Hannah's eyes flicked to him for a second longer than to me. It was nothing, a blink, a sliver of time. I filed it under friendly neighbor behavior and invited her in. The living room looked like a yard sale. Boxers stacked books in wobbly towers, a lamp on the floor because we had not found the table it belonged to. Hannah laughed and said, "This is the fun part. Trust me, it goes fast." She asked what we did for work. Ben explained his job in INT at the hospital. I said I was a freelance copywriter with too many tabs open in my brain. She laughed again and said we were going to love this block. Friday nights, the kids ride bikes in circles and the parents talk on driveways. Bring lawn chairs, bring whatever you like to drink. It was easy to like Hannah. She knew the trash schedule, the best takeout, the shortcut to the grocery store. She texted me a list of local contractors in the name of a good dentist. When our internet installation kept getting delayed, she let me use her Wi-Fi from her porch. She waved when she ran past in the mornings, ponytail swishing like punctuation. Helpful, upbeat, unavoidable in the way good neighbors are. Ben liked her too. He said it with the casual tone you use for weather. "Nice woman. Seems to keep the street running." He started timing his evening runs to pass her route. I told myself it was normal. People who live near each other fall into the same rhythms. Shared sidewalks, shared seasons. The first time my stomach pinch was small. Hannah knocked one afternoon when Ben was in the garage. I told her to come through the side gate, and she did, smiling like always. She said she had extra lemon bars. I said she did not need to keep bringing sweets because I was going to outgrow my jeans. She laughed and said that is what neighbors are for. Then Ben walked in, sweaty and satisfied from fixing a shelf. And she said, "Now that is a man who can build things." She said it with a wink I could have ignored. I chose to ignore it. I cut a square of lemon bar and offered it on a napkin. She fed it to herself with 2 fingers and closed her eyes like it was a secret. Summer settled over the street. We put string lights on the fence. People drifted in and out of our yard with paper plates and laughter. Hannah knew everyone's names and everyone's business. She told me who waters their plants too much and who will always borrow a cup of sugar and never return the container. She told me which houses would decorate for Halloween and which would not bother. She never said a mean word. She simply arranged information like a hostess placing forks. I started hearing her knock more often when Ben was home. An extra drill bit, a ladder she could not reach. Could he take a look at her porch light that flickered? Ben is generous. He helps without a running tally. He grabbed the toolbox and said, "Be right back." I said, "Want me to come?" And he said, "No need, 10 minutes. 10 minutes turned into 40. He returned smelling faintly of coconut lotion and said her light was loose and he tightened it. He rinsed his hands at our sink and smiled at me like he had just done a good deed. Maybe that is all it was. I told myself not to be the jealous wife in a new neighborhood. I told myself friendships on the street are made by favors and smiles. I baked banana bread to even the score and dropped it at Hannah's door with a note. She texted a dozen heart emojis and said, "You two are the cutest." One evening, I sat at my desk by the front window and watched the light shift across the street. Hannah jogged by, stopped to tie her shoe, then glanced at our house. Not at the window where I sat, but at the driveway where Ben parks. She lingered a breath too long, then started running again. Ben came home 10 minutes later, humming some tune from the radio. I closed my laptop and told myself I had imagined the pause. The day Hannah invited us to a backyard cookout felt like progress. Community. I thought we brought salad. We met neighbors with names like Mr. Pete and Don with the dog. Ben played cornhole and Hannah cheered for everyone, but somehow louder when he threw. I laughed and clapped and felt the pinch again and then scolded myself for being ungrateful. The block had welcomed us. The air smelled like charcoal and cut grass. Children yelled in good ways. Normal. Ordinary. safe. Later that week, my phone buzzed while I was in the shower. When I checked it, there was a missed call from Hannah and a text that said, "Is Ben around? Need a quick opinion on a wobbly hinge." She had never asked for him directly before. I stared at the message long enough for the bubbles to halt on the screen where she was typing the next part she never sent. I replied, "He is at work. I can swing by." No reply. An hour later, she posted a photo to the neighborhood group chat of the hinge, fixed with a thumbs up emoji. Someone else had helped her. It should have been nothing. It did not feel like nothing. That night, I told Ben I might be paranoid. He kissed my forehead and said, "New places make you read shadows like warnings." He said Hannah was harmless. He said I was safe. I wanted to believe him. I held onto the words like a railing on stairs I climbed in the dark. What I did not know then was simple. Some people knock because they care. Some knock because they are lonely. And some knock because they are looking for a door that will open when yours is not in the room. The first time Ben came home late, he blamed traffic. He said there was an accident on the interstate and everyone had been His voice carried the easy calm of a man who had rehearsed patience in the driver's seat. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But when I looked out the window later, I saw Hannah's porch light flicker off. Almost like a signal. Almost like someone had just come home to. It grew subtle, like a pattern stitched into fabric that you only notice once you pull at a thread. Hannah knocked less during the day when I was around, but somehow Ben started having small reasons to step outside at night, taking out the trash, checking the mailbox even though it had already been emptied, adjusting the sprinkler timer. Each time, I would hear murmured voices near the hedge, too low to catch words. When they opened the door, silence would drop like a curtain. Ben would step back into the kitchen with a casual shrug, saying he was just making sure everything was fine. She had new reasons now. Her sink was leaking, her grill wouldn't start, the roses in her yard were being eaten by bugs. Could Ben recommend something? He had never cared about gardening in his life, but suddenly he researched sprays and soil acidity. I told him he could let her call a professional, but he shook his head and said neighbors look out for each other. I wanted to believe in kindness. I wanted to believe in simple gestures. But kindness doesn't come with phone calls at odd hours. Twice, her name lit up his phone after 10 p.m. He silenced it and muttered, "She just needs advice." Who asks for plumbing advice at midnight? I asked once, lightly, and he gave me the look husbands give when they don't want to fight. A look that says drop it. So I did. But the unease stayed. When we hosted neighbors for a barbecue, Hannah stayed close. Too close. She laughed at everything Ben said. Even the half-finished jokes he only ever told me. She brushed imaginary dust from his shoulder when he flipped burgers. She poured him another drink before he even finished the one in his hand. And he didn't stop her. He let her orbit, like it was natural. Noor, a friend from my old job, came by that day. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Your neighbor is attentive." I laughed it off, but the comment stung. Sometimes it takes an outsider to name what you already see, but refuse to admit. Ben began dressing differently for errands. A clean shave for a quick trip to the hardware store. A fresh shirt just to mow the lawn. I teased him about it, trying to keep things light. He said, "A man can't take pride in how he looks." His tone was sharp enough to cut. I stepped back, nodded, and said nothing more. But inside, something twisted. Pride doesn't explain cologne before raking leaves. Hannah's gestures grew bolder. She baked pies, not for the neighborhood, but just for us. She handed the dish straight to Ben, her eyes steady on his. She started jogging slower when he was outside, slowing enough for him to notice, enough for them to talk. Sometimes I would watch from the window, the way her ponytail bobbed as she laughed, the way he tilted his head closer than necessary. I told myself conversations were harmless, but the air between them vibrated with something I couldn't name. The breaking point of the early signs came on a Tuesday. I had stayed home sick with a headache. Ben thought I was asleep in the bedroom. Around I Levon, I heard voices by the back fence. I pulled a curtain just enough to see. Hannah leaned against the gate, her hand brushing his forearm as they talked. It wasn't the gesture of neighbors. It wasn't a thank you for fixing a light. It was intimacy disguised as casual. His eyes darted toward the house once, as if he knew. I let the curtain fall and sat on the edge of the bed, dizzy with a truth that was still only suspicion. When he came inside, he carried a basket of lemons. "Honestly," he said. "She had too many. Thought we could use some." He kissed my cheek with a smile that felt borrowed. I looked at the lemons, bright and sour, and wondered how long I could swallow bitterness before it burned me from the inside out. From then on, I started keeping notes. Not to accuse, not yet, but to track date, time, reason, how long he was gone, whether Hannah's light turned off at the same time. I filled half a notebook in 3 weeks. The pages read like an alibi in reverse. Proof not of innocence, but of a pattern tightening like a knot. The early signs had turned into something I could no longer ignore. I was carrying questions heavier than the groceries, heavier than the boxers we had once carried into this new house with such hope. And though I had no answers yet, I could feel the ground shifting under the walls we had painted together. The night I stopped doubting began with something simple, a forgotten charger. Ben had left for what he called a quick run to the store. He kissed my cheek on the way out, carrying his keys and phone, humming under his breath like a man with nothing to hide. 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed on the counter. He had forgotten it. I picked it up, ready to call and tell him. Then the screen lit up again. A notification banner stretched across the top. "See you soon, Hannah." My stomach clenched. My hands went cold. I should have called him. I should have placed the phone back down. Instead, I unlocked it. His password was still our wedding date. For a moment, I thought maybe that meant something. Then I opened the messages, thread after thread. Weeks of conversations, jokes, complaints, secrets, photos of dinners they had shared, snapshots of sunsets she sent with captions like "Wish you were here." His replies were worse. "Next time we'll go together. You're the only one who gets me." I read until the words blurred. Then the truth came sharp. A message from that very morning. "Tonight. Same place." I put the phone down as if it burned. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the curtains down, to drag the truth into daylight. Instead, I sat in silence, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. By the time Ben returned with a single bag of groceries that could have been bought in 5 minutes, my decision was made. I smiled tightly, thanked him, and tucked the phone into my pocket. I said nothing. Not yet. I needed to see it with my own eyes. That night, I told him I was tired and heading to bed early. He kissed me goodnight, his lips brushing mine with a familiarity that now felt foreign. I waited until I heard the door click shut, until his car engine turned over. Then I grabbed my keys. The message had mentioned same place. It didn't take long to guess, a hotel not far from our street, one of those boutique spots with dim lighting and discreet parking. I drove with the headlights low, pulse hammering in my ears. When I turned into the lot, my suspicions hardened into certainty. His car was there, parked in the corner like a secret. I parked across the street, hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Minutes crawled, then the door opened. Hannah stepped out first, her ponytail loose now, her laughter rising into the night. Ben followed, his shirt untucked, his face lit in a way I hadn't seen in months. He reached for her hand. She gave it. They walked inside together. My throat tightened. I pressed a hand to my mouth, muffling the sob that broke free. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't lemons or late-night knocks or half-truths about hardware stores. It was betrayal and flesh and blood, holding hands under the neon glow of a hotel sign. I sat there until the windows blurred with condensation from my breath. I wanted to storm inside, to drag them into the street and demand answers. But I stayed frozen, a prisoner of the sight, because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Hours passed. At one point, I dozed off, only to jolt awake when the hotel doors swung open again. Ben and Hannah emerged, laughing softly, as if they were leaving a movie. He brushed hair from her face. She leaned into his touch. Then they kissed, a brief press of lips that still sliced deeper than any argument we had ever had. They parted ways. She called a cab. He walked to his car. I ducked low, heart hammering. He drove off without looking back, heading toward the home where I sat hours before, folding laundry, believing his story about errands. I followed at a distance, headlights off until the last turn. When I pulled into our driveway minutes later, he was already inside, lights on in the kitchen. I stayed in the car, hands trembling on the wheel. Through the window, I saw him pour himself a glass of water, moving casually, like a man who had nothing to confess. I stayed there a long time, long enough for the engine to cool, long enough for the rage to settle into something sharper than tears. Proof lived in my pocket now, in the glowing phone with messages I could not unread. Proof lived in my memory, in the sight of his hand in hers. When I finally stepped inside, he looked up from the counter and smiled. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, words catching in my throat. I wanted to shout, to throw the truth in his face, but I didn't. Not yet. Because betrayal isn't just about what someone does in secret. It's also about what you do once you know, and I wasn't ready for him to know that I knew. Not yet. I did not sleep that night. I lay still and counted the seconds between the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock in the hall. Every sound felt louder, like the house was trying to tell me something I already knew. Ben's breathing evened out beside me. I watched the ceiling and wondered how a person can rest so easily inside a life they have already broken. Morning arrived with the same soft light it always brought. I made coffee because that is what I do every morning. Routine steadies the body when the mind is Ben walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, smelling like mint and soap. He kissed the top of my head and reached for a mug. I stepped back and let the distance land between us like a chair no one sits in. I told him we needed to talk. He looked up with a wary smile, the kind people use when they hope the conversation is about money or chores. I said his name and set his phone on the table. The screen lit up. Hennestret sat there at the top like a headline. He stared hatchet, and in that small silence I watched the story erase every excuse he might have prepared. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I asked simple questions. How long? How often? Where? His answers were short and small. Weeks, a few times, hotels. He said it was a mistake. He said it was not serious. He said he had been lonely and flattered and stupid. I asked him when he planned to tell me. He said he did not know. The truth circled us the way smoke circles a room where the fire has already burned out the furniture. I told him I had seen them. I told him about the hotel lot, the rain, the moment he reached for her hand. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked like a man who had finally found the floor under his feet and realized it was a trap. He said he was sorry in a voice that sounded young. I believed he was sorry. I also understood that sorrow is not a bridge back to the place where we started. I asked him to pack a bag. I asked for his key. I told him he could text me about bills and nothing else for a while. He tried to reach for me. I stepped away. He nodded, and there was a kind of relief in the way his shoulders dropped. Maybe it is easier to follow a directive than to fix what you shattered with 1,000 small choices. He left quietly, and the door clicked shut behind him like a period at the end of a long sentence. Silence can be kind. It can also be cruel. I stood in the kitchen and felt both at once. I called Nur. She arrived with soft clothes and takeout and the kind of presence that lets you breathe. I told her everything without rushing. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she said, "I am here." 3 words that felt sturdier than any promise Ben had managed in months. By late afternoon, the neighborhood was awake. Lawnmowers, dogs, kids yelling the way only kids can. I saw Hannah through the blinds, moving down her front steps with a water can. I watched her pretend to be a person who waters plants. My hands shook, and for a moment I thought I might walk out there and let the entire street hear what she had done. I did not move. That kind of scene would feed her need for attention. I chose a different kind of light. I texted her, "We need to talk." My porch, 20 minutes. She arrived 8 minutes early. Ponytail, neat face, open in the way people practice when they want to look innocent. She held a tin in both hands, as if another batch of cookies could reset the board. I did not invite her inside. I sat on the top step and let her stand on the path, Juani Stepidome. I said her name and asked if she understood why she was here. She blinked and said she was worried about me because she had seen Ben leave with a bag. I watched her lie, and I watched her enjoy it. I said I'd read their messages. I said I had been at the hotel. The tin sagged in her fingers. She set it on the railing and finally dropped the performance. She went through a familiar set of lines. We did not mean for it to happen. We are adults who've got carried away. She felt seen. He felt needed. I was wonderful, and she admired me, and she never wanted to hurt me. Her words sounded like a chorus written by people who confuse attention for affection. I told her the truth does not need a costume. I told her what they had done had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with access. I told her to keep her distance from my home. She tried to redirect blame. She said Ben had pursued her. I said that may be true, and it changed nothing about her choices on my property and in my life. She asked if there was anything she could do. I said yes. Move. She flinched. She said that was not possible. I said staying was not either. I did not yell. I did not swear. I spoke in the flat tone I learned in rooms where people mistake quiet for weakness. She lifted the tin like a shield and then realized it was ridiculous and left it on the rail. She walked away without a goodbye. I watched her go and felt nothing I could name quickly. The rest of the week moved like a strange play where everyone knows the script except the audience. Ben texted logistical questions and then tried to slip in words like love and sorry and forever. I answered with times and dates and account numbers. My sister called to say she could stay the weekend. Nur brought me printouts for a lawyer in case I wanted to ask questions. I did not rush. I let information gather around me until the pieces made sense. On Friday, The block held one of those driveway nights Hannah had promised when we moved in. Folding chairs, coolers, lanterns. I considered hiding behind the curtains. Then I opened the door and sat on her front step with a glass of water and a calm face. People waved from the sidewalk. A few drifted over and asked how we were settling in. I answered politely. No one mentioned Hannah. No one mentioned Ben. The air held something like awareness without accusation. Neighborhoods learn fast. So do women who watch their street thoughtfully. Just before dusk, Hannah came out with a tray of popsicles, offering them to the children first, like she was a kind of hero. When she reached our house, she stopped, looked at me, and shifted the tray toward a little boy beside me as if I were not there. I met her eyes. I did not blink. She move on. Nura sat next to me and whispered that power is not volume. I smiled without showing teeth. Ben asked to meet over the weekend. He suggested a park. I agreed and brought a list. He arrived looking smaller, like a shirt that has been washed too many times. He said he had ended it completely. He said he had told her never to contact him again. He said he would sell the house if I wanted out. He said he would move states if that made me feel safe. I listened. I asked about practical things, shared accounts, the car title, the mortgage. He answered everything quickly, gratefully, like a man relieved to have a job he could complete. When he tried to talk about us, I held up a hand. I said I did not know yet. I said I was not going to rush my own healing to make him comfortable. I said he would not step foot in the house without notice, and he would not speak to me in public unless I initiated. He nodded. He cried. He asked if I could forgive him one day. I told him that day would not come because he asked for it. If it came, it would come because I chose it in a life he no longer controls. Back home, I opened windows and let the evening in. I washed the porch rail where the tin had sat. Sugar can leave a film. So can lies. I put fresh sheets on the bed and moved my pillow to the middle. The house felt different. Not fixed, but mine again. I am not naive about the road ahead. Some mornings will feel clean. Some will smell like rain in a hotel parking lot. I will walk both. I will make lists and keep appointments and go to work and laugh when laughter finds me. I will not edit my story to make anyone else the hero. One night before sleep, I stood at the window and looked at the blue shutters across the street. A light turned on. Another turned off. The pattern that once felt like a secret now felt like weather. It will change. Always those. I turned from the glass and set the kettle for tea. I spoke out loud in an empty kitchen and heard my voice return to me. I said, "We are going to be okay." I meant me. I meant the woman who knows the difference between a welcome and a warning. I meant the life that does not end because someone else could not keep their hand. Life did not snap back to normal after the truth. It never does. It shifted, slowly, like furniture dragged across a floor scraping, noisy, but eventually finding a new place to rest. Ben sent messages every day, sometimes long paragraphs, sometimes a single line. "I miss you. I'm trying. Please don't give up on us." I read them, sometimes, but I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to give him answers he could cling to like a lifeline. Hannah, on the other hand, disappeared into the background. Her porch light still flickered at night, but she didn't knock on my door anymore. She waved once, awkwardly, while walking her dog, then crossed the street before I could respond. The cookies stopped. The smiles stopped. Maybe guilt had finally caught her. Maybe she simply found another open door. I spent those weeks reclaiming the house, painting over the hallway we had left unfinished, rearranging the furniture so the rooms felt new again, making the bed in the middle instead of to one side. It was my way of reminding myself that I could build something on my own, even in the ruins of what I thought I had. Some nights, I lay awake and wondered if forgiveness was possible, if marriages could survive betrayal, if children could still grow up in homes where parents had chosen each other again after failure. Other nights, I thought about divorce papers, about clean breaks, about starting over without having to explain to anyone why trust was a language I no longer spoke. The truth is, I don't know yet which choice I will make. Maybe I don't need to know today. Maybe today is only about breathing, eating, working, and reminding myself that betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. I stood on my porch last night, watching the street where it all began. The same houses, the same shutters, the same quiet that had once felt safe. Only I was different now, stronger, sharper, unwilling to mistake a smile for sincerity again. I know one thing for certain, no matter what happens with Ben, I will never allow someone like Hannah to take up space in my life again. Some doors you keep locked forever. And now I want to ask you, if you were in my place, would you give a husband like Ben another chance, or would you shut that door for good?